Hi guys, so many data centers now are running virtualization, and there's an excellent reason why, because it's a great way of saving money when you're running multiple virtual machines or containers on a single piece of hardware. So today I'm going to go over how you're able to monitor that hardware to make sure that all your services that you're running on there are up. So I'm going to be using a Nagios with a specialized plugin that will allow you to monitor your VMware ESX hypervisor hardware and know what's going on with your hardware, and then you can allow it to be notifying you when there's an issue with your hardware, so you know that all your services are up. So it's no longer, right, one service, one OS going down when the hardware failed. You can have 20, 30 virtual machines running concurrently on that hardware, and you can experience hardware failure. And this is even more critical in environments that don't have any redundancy in place in their virtual environment. So be sure to try this out and see how it works out in your environment. So I'll show you how quick and easy it is to set up. So just keep watching. The first thing I like to do when I set up any sort of client server service is I ping the client or the server, and I make sure there's network connectivity between the client and server. That way later on when I'm trying to troubleshoot, at least I rolled out that I know networking has been taken care of and it's all configured correctly for the required software I'm going to run. After that, we're going to go ahead and install some software. And this script that we're specifically using, this Nagios plugin script, is written in Python. So we're going to use the Python packet manager. So this is always good to have if you're working with Python. So I like to search for it, then I see all the packages related to what I'm looking for. And then from there I could do a yum install. So first I do the yum search and a keyword, and then yum install, and then the packet I'm looking for. In this case it's Python-pip. So we'll go ahead and run that. The install is relatively short, so it just should take a moment to finish. After that, we install a second packet, and this is a Python package that allows for management of distributed systems. So it's Python, and it's called WBEM, and that's Web-Based Enterprise Management. So this is a standard of how to manage distributed systems. So this is what's required for the Python script to run correctly. It does call on this. You notice there's a number of prerequisite software that will install as well, 22 in my case. You could do it with the packet manager, or you can use the yum command. Both of them should work. So I'll put a link here on how to do it with the packet manager as well. And this is what we're going to be using in our Python script to be able to connect to our VMware ESXi or ESX hypervisor, and this will allow us to manage the hardware and monitor the hardware. Now let's go ahead and download the Nagios plugin. It's off claudiokuzler.com's website. He's a system engineer that developed this Python script. It's called check ESXi hardware.py for Python, and he developed this along with some other people. If you check the comments, some other people contributed as well. So we'll go to his website, and I'll have this link in the comment below. So we'll just go ahead and click. Again, it's just a relatively small Python script, very fast to download. So we're going to save this locally on our file system. I'm doing this on the same server. I'm running my Nagios core server on. You can download this on any file and just transfer it to your Nagios XI or Nagios core, whatever you have your monitoring server running on. Again, I'm running CentOS on this machine. You can run this on Windows as well if you have Python installed. Just to keep things consistent, we're going to copy that script we just downloaded and put it into our Nagios plugin folder. So depending if you're running Nagios XI or Nagios Core, it might be slightly different. I'll put in some possible locations in the comments below. So I'm going to go copy it from my downloads folder, and I'm going to copy it to, in my case, it's /user local Nagios and then lib EXEC executable. And this is where all my scripts are located. And now we're going to go in there and make sure the permissions are consistent so that the user that's running the Nagios server, which in most cases is the user Nagios, has permissions to run this script. So let's go ahead and take a look at the file permissions in user local Nagios lib executable. So here we go. So you notice the one in black, the terminal highlighting will kind of give you an indication that it's different from the rest. So we do a long listing, ls-l long listing. We can take a look at how it's different. So the owner, so we can change it from root and user group root to Nagios and user Nagios. Now this is in most cases. Yours might be slightly different depending on how you configured it. You can always look at your Nagios configuration file to determine if the user in the group is different from what I'm specifying here. Once we do that, I want to make sure the execute bit is set. Remember, this is a script. It needs to run, so it needs to be executable. So we're going to do a change mod command here, and that's going to allow us to execute the script without any issues. If you don't run this, then the script won't execute. You'll get kind of some unusual error messages. So change mod 755 will give execute bit to the owner, the group, and everyone else. So now if you do a long list, you kind of see that it's consistent with the rest, at least the coloring notifying that it is an executable file. So now I like to run the script on the command line. This way it's a good way of troubleshooting to make sure the plugin is working the way you want. In this case, this wouldn't work correctly if Python and the Python extension package WE web-based enterprise management was not configured correctly with Python. In that case, this would actually not be running. So I like to run it on the command line, make sure this runs, then you can put in the arguments for the host and the user and the password, and that will give you some feedback. So make sure it actually connects to your ESXi server and that it's providing back the correct information you're expecting before you go in and start modifying the actual Nagios command and client configuration files. Okay, so we're still on our Nagios server here. We have our command line open. Now we're going to go and create our command. All right, we're going to define the command in our Nagios server. So I'm going to user local etc objects. Now this is where most of our configuration files will be located that we're going to be modifying. So if we go in there and do a listing, there's a file called commands.conf. This file has all the defined commands for how we're going to run commands against our clients. So we go ahead and do a listing here, and I usually like to add it towards the bottom where I might add new commands. So this is going to define when a client saying do this command, it's here that's going to define which plugin to use and what arguments to use. So we know how we're going to be able to pull the information from our client. So we're going to go ahead and follow the syntax. If you look at the other commands listed above, you can kind of get it just the syntax. So define command, open bracket, close bracket. And we're just going to specify two fields, command underscore name. And this is arbitrary, so you can give whatever name you want as long as you keep it consistent with the client file, client configuration file. But we'll just call it check underscore ESXi underscore hardware. And then we're going to define our command line. So this is specifying where our Python script is. So command underscore line. And if you notice that user1, that is an argument, a variable that already has the information about the path, so that's kind of saying it's already in user local Nagios. It's kind of already giving that information. So we go ahead and type that in, and then we can just give it the Python script name, the one we downloaded. So it's check underscore ESXi underscore hardware .py. Now we're going to give it the arguments. If you remember when we did the // help, it listed a whole bunch of arguments that we could use. So we could define that here. And if you remember that / help, it had the -h, capital H for the host. And we're going to pass this information from the client. So it's the host address, followed by, we're going to specify the user login for our ESXi. So it's usually the root account is what you're looking for here. So you're going to specify the root -u, it's going to get an argument from the root, and then -p for the password for the root login for the ESXi server. Now we're going to go over and configure a client file. So the client file is going to call back and put in these argument values in our command. All right, so that's how this kind of is connected. So the command is saying it's accept argument, the host name, argument 1, argument 2, and then argument 3. So we have -v, and that is kind of what kind of hardware we're running. So if it's an HP or an IBM, it kind of does distinguish from that. If you take a look at this file, it's actually very interesting. If you take a look at this Python file, you can kind of see how it's working. So if you're familiar with Python and you're curious, go ahead and take a look. I was looking at it earlier, and it was actually really interesting code. So if you have some time. So we have our 3 arguments listed, and now let's go ahead and go take a look at our client file. So I defined my client configuration file just like any other Nagios client file, where I'm able to use the local.config, localhost.config file as a template, and I modify it from there, changing the host name and the IP address. I usually used to leave one of the services to check. I left ping in this case. Of course, you could leave more. I might do another video about monitoring more of the features of Nagios client. There is a lot of functionality there, a lot of additional functionality I'm not covering in this video. I'm just covering the hardware aspect, but there are actually a lot of Nagios tools that allow you to monitor more features, monitor the VMs and such, and the system performance and the disk usage of your ESXi hypervisor, so in this case. But next time, so this is my configuration file, and again, I just modified it from localhost.com, so I used the Linux server, and then I changed the host name, IP address, and then I left ping, so it checks if the server is up. But other than that, I'm now going to add the command I defined. So I'm going to add another service that's going to call the command I defined in command.conf. So I'm going to do the define service, open bracket, and now we can provide some configuration for the service that we're going to be monitoring. So first we use, this is a template. So we're using a pre-existing template that has some settings about how often and when the service should be checked, and if it should be notified. You could add some other details in there about notification as well. So I'm going to use generic service, and if you want to take a look at that, it's actually in the same folder. If you just do a grep for generic service, it'll come right up, so you can take a look at those settings in the Nagios objects folder, and you can see it in there. So then we just provide the host name, and I usually keep it the same as the system host name just to make it easy. Service description, and this is how it's going to appear on the Nagios core web interface or Nagios XI web interface. So you can make it as descriptive as you want. So I'm just going to call it ESXi hardware check. So you can, of course, rename this to anything you want to make it appear on the website a certain way. And then the command we just defined in the command.conf file. So check underscore command, and it's what we named it, the command underscore name. Check ESXi underscore hardware. And then we're going to provide it the arguments that we told it should be expecting in the command.conf file. So if you remember, it was the username, the password, and then the hardware version. So if it's an HP or Dell, or an IBM. So you can look at root. So my case in my ESXi server, it's root. I specify the root password. If you don't want to specify the root password, that's perfectly okay. There actually is an option here to give it a file instead. So you could point it to a file if you don't want it to have the command or the password stored in a file that's readable, and it might appear in your process listing as well. So you might be better off putting your username password in a file, and I'll put an example in the comments below as well. So now I'm going to go ahead and specify the server. So I'm going to go ahead and call it HP. In this case, it's actually a virtual machine, but I'm going to specify HP, and it's actually going to work out just fine. Now that the client has been configured, we're going to have to add it to our nagios.conf file. And this is where it looks for which clients that should be included in the Nagios core configuration. So we're going to go up one level. It's user local Nagios etc. And in that, there's a nagios.conf file. Now there's a number of entries called config underscore file. And we want to make sure that we have our entry for our ESXi1 host. So you notice the path there. Let's go ahead and restart our Nagios service by running service Nagios restart. If there's any syntax error in any of your configuration files, you get an error message here, so you should be able to go back and modify it. Once that's done, if there's no error message, we can go take a look at our Nagios core or Nagios XI web interface and see our host listed. So you see there is our ESX1 host. And you see the pings listed as okay, but let's take a look at the other services that it's being monitored. And there's our ESXi hardware check. So just give it a few minutes and it should update. Right now, update status is pending. So in a few minutes, it'll show the information that it retrieved back, that was returned back from our Python script that's running. What's really great about this is the information you get back. It'll tell you if you have a disk failure, it'll tell you you have a battery that needs replacing. It'll tell you any sort of hardware failure or hardware issues that you should be notified, and it'll be listed right here. And then you can have that returned back as a critical or a warning and get notified that there is a hardware issue. And you can come look at the information here. You can look at your system for information as well. So that's really a nice feature of this plugin, is it tells you what hardware is having issues. Thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you're able to use this Nautilus plugin to be able to set up your environment and start monitoring your hypervisor hardware.